Good afternoon, listeners. This is Imad Kasir on Planet FM 87.6, and the show is your favorite Mind and Muse. Every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. we dive deep into the rich worlds of art, literature, mind sciences, book reviews, and we also invite esteemed guests to our studios to have discussion on these subjects, these areas. So you can catch us live on www.radio.gov.pk/live-streaming, and you can also download the Radio Pakistan's official app from the Play Store, and you can also follow our Facebook page with the name Planet FM 87.6. And today I am super excited because it's a wonderful topic that we'll be discussing today. And let me first ask you something. Have you ever watched a movie and you have fallen in love with the story and later found out that it was actually written hundreds of years ago? So listeners, tonight we are talking about stories that were written before cameras existed, yet they still fill cinema halls today. And yes, tonight's show is all about movies based on Shakespeare's plays. And don't worry, it's not a classroom. It's there won't be any exam and no difficult English here. This is Shakespeare, and the way we like it, and full of love, drama, ambition, and great cinema. So whether you know Shakespeare very well or you only know him from the movies like The Lion King or Romeo Juliet, this show is absolutely for you. So get comfortable, turn the volume up, and let's travel from old English stage to modern movie screens, and from paper to Netflix, and right here in Mind and Muse with me, Imad Kasir. So I exactly understand that most of you will be thinking that Shakespeare seems like a textbook, so get relaxed. Tonight Shakespeare is fun. Shakespeare is fun, it's dramatic, it's all about Hollywood movies. So grab your earphones, headphones, and imagine that theater curtains are opening and the show is starting. So who was Shakespeare? Most of us already know that William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in a small town, Stratford-upon-Avon in England, and he was the greatest, one of the greatest poets, playwright, and master storyteller, and he was master in understanding the human emotions. That is the main reason that if we go through his plays or his poetry, and even in his plays, be it comedy, be it romantic story, whatever genre he writes in, it's all about the human emotions, and he was master in his understanding that. And as I just shared, that he was born in 1564, so it's over 400 years ago. But his stories, his plays are still relevant, and still these stories feel modern because he wrote them. He wrote those stories purely based on the human emotions, which don't get old. He wrote about people. He wrote about the basic feelings like love, hate, and such, and power and dreams. So Shakespeare basically understood human psychology very well, as I just mentioned. And today we'll be focusing more on the plays which were adapted by Hollywood, and there almost all of his works have been translated also, and most of his works, there are films based on his plays also. We'll be discussing them, and his stories, his and the we'll be definitely discussing the categories of his plays also. We are discussing about one of the greatest English playwright, poet, Shakespeare, and we'll be mainly discussing the Hollywood adaptations about Shakespeare's works. And Shakespeare wrote many plays, and these plays, most of them fall into three main categories. So listeners, as I mentioned earlier, that we'll be discussing the categories. So let me break it down for my listeners in a simple way. So the first category would be tragedies. And these are serious stories, usually with sad endings. And the common themes of these stories, these plays are death, betrayal, ambition, and jealousy. So all these tragedies of Shakespeare, these have these common themes, and most of these are with sad ending. And popular tragedies of Shakespeare include Romeo and Juliet, and we all have read this lovely play, and we all have most of us have watched movies. There are more than one movies on this play, and we'll be discussing those in detail. And the story is that love that ends in tragedy, and it is often said that when Shakespeare had authored this play, it was admired at that time also, but most of the audience and readers, they requested Shakespeare to change the ending, and they wanted a happy end of this play, but Shakespeare did not agree to his audience, and he was of the view that if he changed the end, the story won't live long. And Shakespeare, he was absolutely right, as we see that even after 400 years the story still it's so inspirational, and we all love and like and get inspiration from the story. And if Shakespeare had changed its end, the story would have ended. So, and when I say that story would have ended, that simply means that people wouldn't have referred to that story today. So, this is one of the most popular tragedies of Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. And then we have Hamlet, a prince confused between action and emotion. This is also one of the most read and most watched Shakespeare's play. And then one of my favorite, that is Macbeth. And this is such a lovely drama, such a lovely play, such a lovely film, and a man destroyed by ambition. So this is a very lovely story. In this story there are witches also, and such a beautiful plot this story has. So it's a wonderful one, Macbeth. This is also a tragedy. And then we have Othello, and where jealousy gone wrong. So these are the popular tragedies of Shakespeare, and this is the first category of his plays. And in tragedies, as we all know, that nobody wins, but the audience. We as audience, as readers, we feel everything. We feel the emotion. We feel the intensity of human emotions. And Shakespeare was absolutely master of reading and writing the emotions of human beings. And he has so beautifully he has done this, that when we just read any of his plays or even his poetry, the first thing that I personally have noticed every time that I read Shakespeare, that his command or his innate ability to know the exact emotions and also to express those emotions in his plays, and that is something, as far as my personal view is concerned, I think that no one else could have done it better than Shakespeare. So he has done it so beautifully, and this was the first category. The second category of his plays is comedies. And this is such a beautiful combination, listeners, that on one side Shakespeare has so beautifully authored plays which we consider the greatest tragedies of all times in literature, and at the same time he was so remarkable in writing comedies also. So it's not that stand-up comedy, of course, and Shakespeare's comedies are a bit more serious. These comedies are about confusion, mistaken identity, and love triangles. So his style of comedy was different than what we call comedy in today's world. But listeners, if you haven't gone through Shakespeare's comedies, my humble suggestion would be to go through any of his comedies also, because those comedies give you a beautiful flavor, and in those comedies, one thing, if you aren't happy with the sad endings of his tragedies, then you must read his comedies, because most of his comedies have happy endings. So his famous comedies, if we see, are A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it's about magic and confusion, and then we have Twelfth Night, and disguise and romance are the main themes of this comedy. And again, one of my most favorite, and this is such a lovely comedy, that is Merchant of Venus. And it is a comedy mixed with some serious questions. And again, listeners, I'll keep on repeating it, that you people must read these classics from Shakespeare, and these lovely comedies, these plays usually end with smiles, peace, and mostly weddings also. So this is another popular category. We can divide Shakespeare's works in, we discussed tragedies, and we discussed comedies. And the third category would be histories. So he was a historian also, and these plays are about kings, power, wars, politics, and Shakespeare has wonderfully authored this genre of history also. And Henry V and Richard III, these are his famous histories, and these stories show us that how power changes people. and of course not always for the better. So whether it's a tragedy or comedy or history, Shakespeare had something for everyone. And listeners, I would again suggest and request you all, my listeners, that Shakespeare is considered classic. He is considered one of the finest poet, one of the finest playwright the world has ever seen, and not only in English, but he is considered globally. His plays have been translated into all major languages also. His poetry is also translated. So if you just want to go through classics, you must read Shakespeare's plays, and we'll be discussing the Hollywood adaptations of his plays right after this beautiful track. Welcome back, listeners. This is Imad Kasir on Planet FM 87.6. The show is Mind and Muse, and we are discussing Shakespeare from stage to screen, and we discussed that we can categorize his plays into three major categories, and which are history and romantic plays, and the comedies, tragedies also. Tragedies and love stories. In most of the love stories Shakespeare we see are either comedies or tragedies. So major areas would be tragedies, comedies and histories. And before discussing his adaptations in Hollywood, let me just share my views on the fact that why do the filmmakers, they keep returning to Shakespeare. So listeners, do you have any idea that why these filmmakers, and I shared in the start that Shakespeare had written those plays even before there were cameras. Cameras weren't there, and it's been 400 years ago. So yet his stories and his dramas are the first choice for the filmmakers. Why is it so? Have you ever thought on this? So let me tell you, because simply we can say that his stories are like timeless, and they are classics that tap into universal themes. And like, for instance, love, power, revenge, betrayal, it's all the stuff that we can relate to even today. So these are the themes, these are the areas, these are the emotions, and we know that his plays were emotionally strong, and since these things can't get old, his plays were written although 4 centuries ago, but the emotions of love or hate or jealousy, or these emotions can never get old. So the first thing is that his plays are emotionally so strong. That is the main reason that they are universal. The second thing I would say that it's Shakespeare's language. It's like poetry in motion, and as we discussed that he was a poet himself and a wonderful poet, we'll be definitely discussing about his poetry also in our upcoming shows, but today we are focusing only on his plays which were adapted by Hollywood for the films. So directors love playing with the drama, the emotion, the conflicts, and it's like it's like a recipe for cinematic magic. And let's be real that who doesn't love a good adaptation. So Shakespeare's plays are already written so beautifully, and those plays cover the emotions, the drama, and the visually he has such a rich expression, and the visuals we see while reading his plays, while going through any of the Shakespeare's works, be it his comedies or his tragedies or history. Once you start reading any of Shakespeare's books, you will definitely feel this. You will find the fact that Shakespeare has so beautifully he has given the details of the visuals that you will see yourself watching all that drama with your own eyes, and you will feel yourself part of that set he creates for you, that ambience and that environment, and that. So this is so these directors, these filmmakers, as I would say that most of their job, their work, that has already been done by Shakespeare himself. So for a director, it becomes very easy to get that filmed, because the rest of the stuff on paper, that is so strong and so beautifully completed by Shakespeare himself, that the director has to only put that stuff in front of the camera, and rest of the stuff is already there. And so this is the second characteristic that we find in Shakespeare's plays, and that is the main reason why these film directors, these filmmakers, they keep on returning to Shakespeare. And we see that most of his plays, they have multiple adaptations. So they are emotionally strong, they are dramatic, they are visually strong, they are universal. So these directors, these filmmakers, they like stuff like, for instance, a king losing power, or maybe a lover fighting society for his love, or a hero questioning life. So these stories don't need time or place. They fit any era, they fit any society, they fit any timeline. When we see, like, if we see the 15th century, when Shakespeare had written those plays, and if we see his works today, they are pertinent, they are relevant. As I just shared, that he talks about human emotions, he talks about human psychology. He's a master in reading and then writing those emotions in his stories, and his innate ability to create that beautiful environment for the reader, that reader simply gets mesmerized by reading his works. So these are the things that attract the film directors to return to Shakespeare every now and then. And there is one more thing, that Shakespeare, they can simply, if we see his works, the language he has used. So again, if a director has to get something written for his film, the script from a writer, so they want that language to be they tell him the theme, that we want this a classic, or this should be a comedy, or this may be a history. But in Shakespeare's language, we see that some directors, they keep his original language, and some modernize the setting, and some directors we have seen that they hide Shakespeare completely, but the story remains. So Shakespeare's language, his classic expression, and his mastery over creating that beautiful environment in his plays, and grabbing the attention of the reader, these are the things that attract the directors, and that is the main reason why they keep on making movies on Shakespeare plays. So we are discussing one of the greatest playwright and poet of all the times, Shakespeare, and specifically we are discussing the Hollywood adaptations of his popular plays. And so let's start with one of my favorite, that is Romeo and Juliet, and there are more than one adaptations of this beautiful play and this tragedy, but I'll be discussing the one which was directed in 1996. Romeo plus Juliet, this movie was directed by Baz Luhrmann, and some interesting facts about this lovely movie are that the film keeps most of the original Shakespeare dialogues. So this is something really interesting, that the author, the film director, he has in fact kept the original script there in the movie, in most of the movie, and so that really looks cool, and Luhrmann mixes it in some modern slangs also with this, so this is also something interesting, and we all like and we admire Leonardo DiCaprio. He was the hero as Romeo, and this was his big break. He was just 21 when this film was shot, and that movie made him a star. And so his acting in that movie was brilliant, and Verona becomes Verona Beach. The film's set in a crazy, colorful, Miami-like world, but with swords and guns. So Shakespeare meets gang culture. So, and that balcony scene, that was iconic, and that Romeo and Juliet, that scene that was picturized there, that is an unforgettable scene, and Shakespeare's themes, those modern vibes, that love and violence and everything in that movie, that is simply amazing. So the first thing I simply like about this movie was that I just shared, that most of the dialogues, most of the text is original, that is unchanged, and still that old school Shakespeare, but they work beautifully, and when you watch that movie, it gives you some different kind of a pleasure, and it's lovely to see that Shakespeare style English in action, and then the beautiful picturization, as I just mentioned, one scene, and that the rivalry, the guns, these swords, that is so intense and so beautiful. And the soundtrack, that soundtrack is of course classic, that is simply wonderful. And that movie, particularly this Romeo and Juliet, Romeo plus Juliet, this is simply that story is Shakespeare's story, and but with fast guns and cars. So he has so wonderfully he has directed this movie, the director and the role, both the lead characters, and Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio, they have beautifully acted in that movie, especially Leonardo DiCaprio. His role, his acting, his dialogues, his expressions are so amazing in this movie. And the sets are modern, but the dialogues are Shakespearean. So this is a lovely combination, listeners, that the on the modern sets, but that English is of that era, that Victorian era that Shakespeare wrote. So that is such a wonderful combination that once you just start watching this movie, you simply feel yourself in that era. And with that beautiful picturization of the movie, that makes it a classic. And these young actors and strong emotions and lovely music, these are the things that make this movie one of the greatest movies when we talk about the Hollywood adaptation of Shakespeare. So if I have to rate, I would rate this movie on the top, because this movie has so much to offer. This movie, not only, as I just mentioned, that not only the fact that they have used that most of the dialogues and script that is original Shakespeare, they haven't, the director, he hasn't changed the script, but keeping that script in that old-fashioned style, that Shakespeare style, yet mixing it with the modern day stuff. So that is so beautifully done by the director. And as I mentioned, that music, the acting, the sets, and the outdoor scenes, particularly those in this movie, those are picturized so beautifully that you can simply imagine that you are, you feel yourself that you are part of that set. So listeners, this is whenever a director that directs any of a movie which is based on a play, or based, as we are discussing this particular movie, this Romeo plus Juliet, so he has to ensure that the essence, the author, the actual playwright, the actual writer, he has put that on the paper, so that essence should remain there. And we must admire, and we must give full credit to the director that he has successfully achieved this target by simply making this wonderful movie and keeping that essence what Shakespeare had shown us in his play. So if you have read that drama, that play of Shakespeare, this one of the greatest tragedies of all time, Romeo Juliet, and Romeo and Juliet, and if you have gone through the play first and then you watch the movie, and ideally it should be like this, the sequence should always be like this, that if you want to read and also want to watch the movie, then you must read the play first. And we have discussed in this particular this concept, and I have discussed this in my previous shows also, when we were discussing the novels of Dan Brown, and there also I had discussed this, that if you want to watch the movie and also watch the and also read the novel, then you should first read the novel. Similarly, in these classic plays of Shakespeare, if you are a reader and if you also like to watch movies, so you must go for the book first, for that play, for that written text first, so that you exactly know what is there in the script, and before you watch the movie. Because if you watch the movie first, then you won't be able to connect it with that text. So the point I was making here is that the director, he has so beautifully, Baz Luhrmann, the director, he has so beautifully connected all those dots, and he has connected that script, that 400 years old script in today's world, and he has done it so beautifully, and he has shown us all those places and all the sets. They speak of itself so beautifully that Shakespeare had written that in his plays, and the director has done full justice with that script, and that is the reason when we watch that movie, Romeo plus Juliet, that is simply amazing. So listeners, we'll be discussing more about Shakespeare's plays, and we'll be discussing more of his works, which is adapted by Hollywood. And we are discussing one of the greatest playwrights of all the times, Shakespeare, and in particular his plays, which are adapted by Hollywood movies. So before the news bulletin, we were discussing Romeo and Juliet, and we discussed the movie which was released in the year 1996 and starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and that movie, as we discussed, was one of the most wonderful movies when it comes to the Hollywood adaptations of Shakespeare. And listeners, here I would share my views on related to this tragedy, and we discussed this fact also, that when this play was authored by Shakespeare 400 years ago, more than 400 years ago, so he was most of his readers and his friends and his fans of that time, they requested him to change the ending of this tragedy, but he did not agree. And he was of the view that if he changes this, the end of this, converts this end to a happy end, the story will not be remembered by many, and those people would be happy, those who were asking him, but this will not become part of the classic literature as it is now. So here the point is that most of the folk tales we know, and even in our Eastern culture and in Eastern literature, we know that most of the tales that Heer Ranjha and Soni Mahiwal and Yusuf Khan Sherbano and Sassi Punnu, all these tales of East, rather of this area, this land in which we live. So these tales, if we just focus that all these tales, these are tragedies, and these tragedies, these folk tales, these are the reason why people relate, or why people like to read, or they watch movies based on these tales. Is this reason is that since these were all tragedies, so it is said and it is believed that these tragedies, these have long-lasting impact on the readers' minds. So this is something very interesting about these tragedies. So let's come back to the topic that we were discussing, from the stage to screen, and with respect to William Shakespeare. So we discussed Romeo and Romeo plus Juliet, and another beautiful play is Hamlet. And this movie was also released in the year 1996, and this was also a wonderful movie, and This was directed, and the main lead was also the same person, Kenneth Branagh, and he was the director and hero. And some beautiful facts about this Shakespeare movie are that, again, like Romeo and Juliet, this film uses the entire Shakespearean text, like every word of it. So it is, and it's a long movie. It's and all that they have kept that original text alive. So that is beautiful. And the lead character that plays the tortured prince with big feels, and he's like to be or not to be, in full Shakespearean mood. And this is the famous iconic line from the play. And all that star crew, this had a very, all the stars of Hollywood, they were in that movie. And we know that Julie Christie and Derek Jacobi, Kate Winslet, and the cast of this movie was wonderful. And that blend of that old and that 19th century castle looks, that was epic. And the sets, all these costumes, those are wonderful. And that typical, that Shakespeare's themes, those are still relevant. And listeners, as we discussed in the start, that no matter the sets look that old style, and that costumes used by those actors, they also look old, but the story, the emotions, the dialogues, you may find that the English that we read in Shakespeare's plays, or we watch in those movies, that is, of course, that old style, but the essence, the emotions, and that the strength in that emotion and in that expression, that is timeless. So whenever you go through any of Shakespeare's works, you will feel this fact that his expression, and that is simply timeless. So that is about this Hamlet, and that is simply marvelous. And it's like it's a literal castle, that the film was shot in a palace, and that is a real palace in England. The location, the selection of that location was epic. That is simply wonderful. So that is not a set, that is an actual castle. And so and it's wonderful. And if we just watch that movie, and if we have gone through that play, so we can relate that the environment in which Shakespeare has, he puts his readers in, and he wants that readers to visualize that the set. So the director, he has exactly picked that very place and where the film was shot. So that is beautiful. And that screenplay, that was also written by the director, so he adapted it himself and kept the whole text intact. That is interesting. The film has beautiful flashbacks, and these flashbacks are for Hamlet memories, like with his dad. Those particularly these flashbacks in the movie. So if you watch that movie with some concentration, or so you will find that all those flashbacks, those are shot very beautifully, and that gives you an extra that extra flavor, that topping of that movie, that is those flashbacks. And that to be or not to be that iconic moment, as I just discussed, and that the hero, he does it in the mirror, and that's really cool. That scene particularly is absolutely brilliant. That when he is standing in front of that mirror and he is saying this iconic line. So, and this film, there is another interesting fact about this movie is that this received 4 Academy Awards nominations, and that was one of the best projects of the director. And this movie, this is simply classic. So listeners, what we call, if we need to know what a classic movie is, we must watch this movie titled Hamlet, that is based on, of course, Shakespeare's timeless play Hamlet, and the sets, the dialogues, the costumes, the acting, the actors, as I just shared, the names of those famous Hollywood actors. They were all in that movie. The movie was released in the year 1996 and is still considered one of the finest movies when it comes to this adaptation of Shakespeare plays. So this is a beautiful movie, and those interested in watching classic English literature and movies in particular, so they must watch this movie called Hamlet, and we'll be discussing more about Shakespeare's works right after this beautiful track. Welcome back, listeners. This is Imad Kasir on Planet FM 87.6. The show is Mind and Muse, and we are discussing one of the greatest playwright, author, poet, Shakespeare, and we are discussing the Hollywood adaptations on his plays, and we discussed Romeo and Juliet, Romeo plus Juliet, the movie we discussed also, and Hamlet. Both these movies were released in the year 1996, and now another wonderful, classic, iconic movie that is called Macbeth. And this wonderful movie was released in year 2015. And listeners, one more thing, that these movies, like for instance Romeo plus Juliet, most of the works of Shakespeare, they have been adapted in multiple adaptations. So I am discussing quite a few of them, and we see that this Macbeth, its adaptation in earlier years also, but the movie right now I'm discussing is the one which was released in the year 2015, and Justin Kurzel was the director, and so it's a wonderful movie. And listeners, this play of Shakespeare, this is one of my personal favorites also, Macbeth, and it's such a wonderful story, and it is intense, it is creepy, it is some very, very interesting theme. And Fassbender, he played the hero, that Macbeth, and he's intense as the ambitious dude and who want to be king. So it's related to power, as we discussed in the start. So power trip, and that Lady Macbeth, she's fierce, and she has got that crazy ambition too, and like Macbeth, and she is basically the one pushing him also, and so that king, that they want to gain that power, and in that journey of getting that power, that is so interesting, and this is such wonderful. And there are witches also in this drama, as I discussed in the start also, and this is trippy weirdness, and the witches in the film are like haunting visions that adds to that beauty of that film and that class of that film, and this blood plus violence. And the director, he has shot this movie in such a beautiful way that once you just start watching this movie, which was released in the year 2015, Macbeth, right from the start, if you watch a movie and if you read the play, and both have that same kind of that mesmerizing impact on the reader or someone who watches that movie, that it has that. And in most of the Shakespeare's works, his plays in particular, we see that he captures the attention of the reader right from the first paragraph, right from the first line of the start, so right from the first dialogue. And this is as simple as it is, and in the movie also. And you start, like, you watch the first scene and you are simply mesmerized, and you cannot leave that book without before completing it, and similarly you cannot leave that movie until it is complete. So it is very beautiful, and movie, some more interesting facts about the movie are that it was shot in Scotland, and that Scottish beautiful landscapes and fits that the dark mood of the film. This film is mostly that shot in that dark kind of that the entire environment, because the story is so, and that story, but that entire mood of the movie, that the entire environment, and that the color scheme of that movie, that is simply classic. And the lead characters, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they toxic power couple, and they just want to get that power, no matter how do they approach that power, how do they want to get that power. They are simply mad or crazy about that power, and they don't follow the rules or the ethics. They just want that power, and in that power game, in that stuff, all that story is created so beautifully. And that is the reason why is this a timeless play of Shakespeare, that we know, listeners, that power is something that since the start of mankind, power is always loved, power is always admired, but there are ways to reach to that power. And if we see in the history that those who wanted power, and they simply most of the characters in the history, we see that they were gone mad to get that power, and they forgot the ethics, and they killed others to attain or to get that power. And that is something we see and we read in the history, and the history is the books are full of such examples. But when it comes to literature, and a person like an author or a playwright like Shakespeare, when he puts such things into his plays, he simply makes it so beautifully. He creates that classic touch in that plays. And as we are discussing this fact also, that Shakespeare was a master of human psychology also, and he could exactly put that stuff on the paper, what was felt by those people from the history who were crazy about gaining some that power. So Shakespeare had that innate ability to simply put that in his plays, and he has given these characters which were created in his imagination, but those are simply and the dialogues. Listeners, if you just read those dialogues and those conversations of these plays, and especially the dialogues of this Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and particularly their conversation, and then those visions, those witches when they come into the movie, that is classic, that is simply wonderful. And so Macbeth's it has got some beautiful scenes, and film is basically a psychological dark ride, and this director, it's all about that inner turmoil, that when you feel the madness of those characters, and those soundtracks are also haunting. The music adds to it, that background music that also makes it more classic, and that has a very interesting impact on those who watch that movie. So again, my suggestion would be to my dear listeners that take some time out to read this wonderful and classic and timeless play of Shakespeare, and then watch that movie. We all, if we want to take some time, we can. So this is all about our priorities. If we keep such things in our priority, that we have to read some good quality literature. So listeners, we know that when it comes to quality, when it comes to class, Shakespeare is of course the best when it comes to English classic literature and his works. And this is one of my personal favorites also, Macbeth. So I had read it when I was in school, and then I had read its translation in Urdu also. Both English and Urdu are classics, and of course the translation is very beautifully done. And then I have watched these movies also, and as I was mentioning earlier while we were discussing Romeo plus Juliet, that we should go for the text, for the drama, for the book first before watching the movie. While we discuss one of the greatest of all times, Shakespeare, and let me just share that it is 10th of January, and we here in Pakistan observe the death anniversary of one of very famous poet, Hafiz Hoshiar Puri. So it is his death anniversary being observed today. So let's coming back to Shakespeare's to the movies based on Shakespeare's plays, and we discussed Macbeth, and it was a wonderful movie, and the story focused on ambition, guilt, consequences, and it was nominated in different categories for Oscars, and it was praised by the critics also. So that movie is one of the greatest movies when it comes to Hollywood adaptations on Shakespeare's works. So now I'll be discussing a very interesting movie, and listeners, I'm sure that It's kind of a surprise for you, for my listeners also. And the movie is The Lion King. It was released in the year 1994. And before Macbeth, we discussed a play, Hamlet. This particular story, this Lion King, this was inspired by Hamlet. And this definitely surprises many people, that Lion King movie was inspired by Hamlet. And now let me tell you the similarities. Dead father, evil uncle, and a prince finding his destiny. And I'm sure that most of my dear listeners, they have watched this movie called The Lion King that was released in the year 1994. And those who had watched this movie, they know that there was a dead father, an evil uncle, and a prince finding his destiny. And all these themes are inspired by Hamlet. So this movie, this was wonderful, and this was an Oscar-winning music also. It was a global blockbuster, and we can say that Shakespeare in Disney style. So the story was inspired by Shakespeare's play. So this is really a great thing. And now there is another interesting movie, that is West Side Story, and there are two adaptations of this. One was in 1961 and the other in 2021, and this is based on Romeo and Juliet. And again, when I was discussing the Romeo and Juliet, I intentionally did not go into detail of the story, because I'm sure that all of our readers and all of our listeners, they know the story very well, and it's a love story between two rival groups. And there's music and dance and emotion and all that stuff, and that it has a tragic and tragedy end. That is why it is considered one of the greatest tragedies of all times, this Romeo and Juliet. And West Side Story, this is also inspired based on Romeo and Juliet, and these movies were also they won multiple Oscars and timeless popularity, as we are discussing these. The first one was released in the year 1961, and we are still discussing it, and the second one in the year 2021. So this shows that these were definitely timeless. And it also proves that Shakespeare's love stories work anywhere, anytime. And this is what we discussed in the start also, that Shakespeare's works are timeless, Shakespeare's plays are timeless, and Shakespeare wrote mainly on the emotions of human beings, the psychology he knew very well, and that is the main reason why he is still relevant, and he will always be relevant, because these emotions, these feelings, these themes of love and hate and revenge, all these feelings, these cannot go old, and that is why Shakespeare is always fresh, Shakespeare is always pertinent, Shakespeare is always relevant. And the movies we discussed, we just focused on the fact that how beautifully those movies were directed by those relevant directors of those movies, and Shakespeare is always a first choice for any director when it comes to directing a movie on some classic literature. So before we wrap up, I would just give my final thoughts on the fact that original work versus adaptation. And, a written play and a movie adaptation, these are two different things. This is the first thing we must know. And, of course, I would again I would repeat this, that all those who have read Shakespeare's works and then they have watched the movie, they can relate to it more easily. Otherwise, if you have only read his works and you haven't seen the movie or the other way around, then it won't be, you won't be able to relate it that way. So the first thing here to know is that a movie and a written play are absolutely two different things. The original work that lives in words, that depends on imagination, that has usually a poetic language, particularly if we are talking about someone like William Shakespeare. And whereas the movie adaptation, that adds visuals, that adds music, that adds modern emotions. So neither is better, neither is worse. We are simply trying to make a point that these are two different things. So while reading a book, you must keep this thing in your mind, and while watching a movie also, you need to know that there is no comparison of the two, because these are two different categories. The common point, the theme is that since one is the original work from the poet himself, from the author, from the playwright, and the other is an adaptation. So these are two different things, and they simply tell the story, the directors, same story in different ways. The movies help Shakespeare reach new audiences, and books help us understand his original voice. And that is why Shakespeare is still alive, not in the classroom, but in the stories we continue to watch, in the movies. Those who haven't read Shakespeare's works yet, I'm sure that most of our listeners, they must have watched movies. And so this is really great. And just as we we have reached the final moments of today's show, that I can tell you that from those old-fashioned theaters to bright 3D cinema screens, and from handwritten manuscripts and plays to the award-winning films, we have seen how Shakespeare's stories never really grow old. And one more important point here to remember is that that these things, and there is no comparison, as I mentioned earlier, and there is we can't say that movies are better than the books, as I mentioned, that these are two different things. And we must know, we must put this fact in our mind very clearly, that when we are talking about Shakespeare's plays, we must know that his words, his expression, his style, his magic on the paper, that is timeless and that is matchless. No one else, no one in English literature, or there, and again, when we say a giant like, a literary giant like Shakespeare, if we are reading, if we are giving him tribute, we should only focus on his writings. We should only focus on his class, his mastery over words. And we can say that this fashion of comparison, we like tend to compare two different poets of different eras, two different writers or authors, or even we come across people like who want to compare, like for instance, Ghalib with Shakespeare. So it really sounds, it doesn't sound that well to me, at least, that Shakespeare is a giant. He has a class of his own, and similarly Ghalib is also a literary giant. He has his class. We cannot compare two different classics, two different writers, two different poets, even of the same language. If we compare John Milton with Shakespeare, we cannot do that also, because John Milton is another literary giant. He has his class. He is another classic. And I can recall my grandpa, Sayyid Ahmad Akhtar. He used to say he was a poet, and he was, he had poetry books published in both Urdu and English, and he was also a fan of all these English classics and Urdu classics, and he wrote poetry in both the languages. He used to say this thing, that we cannot compare Shakespeare with Milton. Shakespeare has his class and Milton has his own class. And if you are, and similarly as in Urdu we say that we cannot compare Ghalib with Mir. They have their entire different class. Ghalib is classic, and so is Mir. Similarly, Milton is classic, so is Shakespeare. But in today's show, we discussed Shakespeare in detail, and the point I was making here is that we can simply and simultaneously we can enjoy their works, we can read, we can learn, we can feel, and once we know that how great Shakespeare was, once we are fan of his works, his writings, his plays, his poetry, and when we read anyone else, for instance, as I mentioned, John Milton, we would know that John Milton was also great. But there is no need to compare two different scholars, two different, and by comparing two, I mean, we simply, to me, it's something that shouldn't be done, because we are not doing justice with their works. They are to be placed at their place. And this was all from today's show. I hope that you people have enjoyed my show today. We discussed Shakespeare from stage to screen, the Hollywood adaptations of Shakespeare's plays. And until next time, this is me, Imad Kasir, signing off from Planet FM 87.6. Allah Hafiz.